When we spoke about that free will episode, we spoke about life. And in life basically said that life is just like a river. It's going in one direction. You go into the sea, that's it. You go into the sea, that's where it ends. You can't go upstream, but all you can do is just guide your boat. And if you don't guide your boat, other people will guide it for you. It starts with setting boundaries and asking yourself, what do you actually want? Know what you want first and put your needs first. Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to another episode of the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you both mentally and physically become the best version of you. Today it is just me and I'm your host, Daniel James. So I want to talk today about something that I think is relevant to a lot of people. It's something that not many people talk about, but it's actually something that I think cripples a lot of people, and that is their ability to actually set boundaries. And the reason I want to share this with you guys is I've just done a workshop with this with my clients, and it's one of the workshops that I do try and get out there whenever I'm working with companies, corporations, organizations, whatever it is. Like, I try and get this particular workshop in there because it's so relevant and powerful. And I'm actually going to make this a 2-part episode. So today's one's going to be about setting boundaries, and then next week's episode, I might actually do it as a special to come out on Thursday, but again, keep your eyes out. I may come out on Thursday, but more than likely it'll be out next Tuesday, so I'm going to decide on that. I'll sit on that. It's all going to be about protecting your energy, because that's fundamentally what we're talking about here. Like, setting your boundaries is essentially about protecting your energy. So I just want to cover setting your boundaries first, and then the next episode will be actually go into a little bit more detail about how to actually protect your energy. And for those long-time listeners of the podcast, you may actually remember I discussed setting boundaries with my former co-host, which was Heather. So Heather, back in the day, the very, very start of the podcast. So a big up to Heather if she's still listening. But again, absolutely incredible human being. So we covered boundaries then, but I really want to sort of deep dive this a bit more on my own today. And as always, don't forget, if you take any value from today's episode, please don't forget to like and share it with a friend to help us spread the word, to help as many people as possible. So let's actually define what is a boundary, because when we talk about setting boundaries, I think we first of all need to actually identify what actually is a boundary. So for me, a boundary are limits that we set with ourselves around what we will and will not tolerate with other people. I think that's a key thing here. It's actually just understanding what limits are you willing to set? What are you willing to accept and what won't you accept? Because in life, if you don't set boundaries, if you're not consciously aware of this, because you have boundaries now, whether you are aware of it or not, but if you're not aware of it, then your boundaries will be benefiting other people and they won't actually be benefiting you at all. And if you're not aware of it, chances are you probably don't have any boundaries at all. So you're either going to have really weak boundaries that people walk all over, or you've got none at all. So it's just understanding here, it's about those limits. And the key thing is we should be able to set these boundaries. So when we're actually going through the process of setting a boundary, just realizing this is what I will and will not accept, we should be able to do that without feeling guilty. Now, guilt's one of those emotions where, again, it's not a positive or negative emotion. It's just an emotion. Like, it's a natural emotion. Like, to feel guilty about something. If you've done something that you should feel guilty over, then feeling guilty is not bad. But we associate guilt with feeling with a bad emotion. It's not. Like, if you've done something bad, you're going to feel guilty about it. But understanding, setting a boundary that looks after you and protects you, you should not feel guilty about that. That is not the right time to feel guilty, because you're doing something that's actually looking out for yourself. That is not a time to feel guilty. Feeling guilty is when you've done something wrong. And setting a boundary to protect yourself and your energy, which will then ultimately protect those around you, whether it's your loved ones, your family, your kids, whatever it is, your business, your mental health, all these different things. If you're doing something for that reason, then you shouldn't be feeling guilt. That's not the right time to be feeling that emotion. Now, the key thing here is, let's say you have set boundaries. Let's say you have got some awareness of some boundaries that you have set at some point. Why do we then let these boundaries slip? Like, why do we either let these boundaries slip, or why do we let people walk all over them? Because we either intentionally let them slip, or we just kind of let people push us by. And again, almost like being like a pushover. And what tends to happen here is that when you're raising yourself up on this journey, whether it's a fat loss journey or a mental health journey, spiritual journey, whatever it is, like, you need to understand here that you are raising your awareness. Like, your awareness is basically your ability to understand the situation. So you've gained awareness of how you are feeling mentally and things that drain your energy or things that protect your energy. When it comes to fat loss, you've gained awareness of foods that are good for you, foods that are bad for you. And again, remember, there's no such thing as a bad food. It's just a case of, if you constantly keep eating these foods that are less nutritionally dense and more calorie dense, then that's not going to be good for what you actually want, either health or fat loss wise. So you gain awareness of the rights and the wrongs. You understand the right path and you understand the wrong path. That's what we talk about awareness here. So as you raise your level of awareness up and you get yourself into an amazing place, people will try and latch onto that. Now that's either consciously or unconsciously. So in order to get yourself this amazing place of whether it's the fat loss, the mental health, the mindset stuff, you'll have had to set some sort of boundaries. Because understand, we spoke about this before when it comes to identity. You can't hold on to that old identity. You can't hold on to that old version of you and then change. So for you to have actually started to get these results, you must have set some sort of boundaries, either consciously or unconsciously, to be like, right, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do. So then you've set these boundaries, you've then started to get better in whatever endeavor it is you're doing. People will then start to latch onto that because they'll start to notice, wow, you're looking amazing. You're radiating confidence, like there's a good energy about you, whatever it is. And again, they'll either pick this up consciously or unconsciously. And then with this, people will try and latch onto that. And we will then abandon ourselves to make sure that this other person gets what they need. Because these are the people coming to us, again, either consciously or unconsciously, and they're essentially saying, oh, I want some of this energy. I want some of this. I want some of this good stuff that you've got. Again, either consciously or unconsciously. Because some people, like, make no joke about it. They'll literally just come in and just say, oh, I want some of this. Like, what are you doing? And they'll try and take it from you. Other people do it on a bit of a subconscious level. And because we're a nice person and we want to make these other people happy, we let these boundaries slip because we want other people's approval. We want to fit in. So again, I think I spoke about this on another podcast before. Like, we want our friends, our partners to like us. Like, that's what we fundamentally want. Like, we are social beings. Like, we're brought up in a tribe, all that sort of stuff back in the day, and we want to fit in. So if someone's there trying to take something from us, like we've got something positive, it's like, oh, well, I need some of this. Like, the last thing you want to do is say no to that person because you're like, oh, if I say no, then they're going to cut me out. And if they cut me out, I'm going to have no friends. So then you're like, oh, okay, I made this person happy. So again, we make this person happy at the detriment of ourselves. And it's fundamentally here. That's why we then feel guilty. We feel guilty because what happens is we're doing this and basically we can't say no. Like, we can't say no to a situation and we know that it's not right. And that's why we then feel a bit guilty. Because we've spent all this time doing this stuff, like we're building ourselves up, getting ourselves this amazing place. We've set these amazing boundaries, these intentions, whatever it is, like these rules as they were. And then someone's just come in and is like, oh, let me have some of this. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay. And then you do it. And then you're a bit like, that didn't feel good. That doesn't help. And again, there's a key thing with this as well. And I think I spoke about this again on another episode. I need to keep track of but the problem is now, I'm doing the radio, doing the podcast, doing these workshops with my clients, the Instagram lives. I forget where I say things. But I spoke about when it comes to money for me and my parents and that enabling thing, because what fundamentally happens is if you're enabling someone, if you're constantly helping someone when they're struggling, you want to help them. You want to be that good person. So you're like, oh, okay, I'll help. What you're doing is you're enabling that person. You're taking that person's power away from them. So just think about that for a second. If someone's constantly struggling, and every time they struggle, they're coming to you and you're helping them and you're bailing them out, you're not allowing them to actually learn and grow as a person. You're actually enabling them to carry on struggling because they're like, oh, well, this person's always going to bail me out. So when it comes to money, if you're constantly bailing someone out with money, you're enabling that person to be bad with money because they're like, oh, so I don't need to worry about money because Dan's always got my back. So just understand that. I know you're doing it because you're a nice person. You're like, I don't like this person struggling. But fundamentally, you're robbing them of that opportunity to actually learn, develop, and grow as a person. And when it comes to you moving through this journey and whatever you're doing, whether it's your fat loss, your mental health, your mindset, once you then start to integrate with that old environment, because again, remember, you kind of got to remove yourself a little bit from that environment that wasn't good for you to basically then nurture this new positive environment. When you go back into that environment, whether again, maybe it's a family event, let's say, people are going to expect you to be a certain way. They're going to expect you to rock up as that old version of you. And the thing with this is when people expect you to rock up as a certain way, they will start talking to you like that old version of you. They'll start interacting with you as if you're that old version of you again. And what then happens is we sometimes, if we're not aware of this, we will then lower our expectations. We'll meet them at their expectations of us. So we're going there, they're expecting us to be this old version of us, and then we lower our standards and go back to that version of us that we don't want to. So we basically just lose all of this new amazing stuff we've done, this newfound confidence, and then we basically just go back, we've regressed that old version of ourselves, and again, it makes us unhappy, it makes us miserable. We've let our boundaries slip. We've let people identify with us as that old version of us. So let's say, let's use alcohol for an example. So let's say you've stopped drinking. You stop drinking for 3 months. You're feeling absolutely amazing. Your life is exponentially better. You've got more energy. You're sleeping better. Your brain fog's got. You're just awesome. Then you go out with your old friends. And your intentions are, actually, right, I'm not going to drink anything tonight. And as soon as you go there, someone's like, oh, hey, like, let me grab you a pint. straight away their expectation is you're the same version that you were before. Now, in that moment, if you don't nip that in the bud and say, oh, no, thank you, I don't drink anymore, I'll have a soda water, straight away, if you don't set that boundary, that intention, what's going to happen is you're going to go back to that old version of you. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll have one. Knowing full well you can't have one, that one becomes 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. So what you're doing is you're letting your boundaries slip and you're meeting them at how they're expecting you to be. That you meet that expectation. They've set that expectation. Oh, this is how you're going to rock up. You then rock up, try and be this new version of you. You don't set any boundaries. You will then become this version they expect you to be. And that's to the detriment of your happiness. That's why you're then going to start to feel guilty because you know, I really shouldn't be doing this. And then next day you're going to wake up, feel guilty, feel horrible. But it all comes back to, well, what if they don't like me? Because what if you go there to the pub? What if they don't like you? What if they don't accept this new version of you? Because they only knew me as this person that drinks. They knew me as this happy Dan that always drank and da-da-da. Well, what if they don't like me now? And that's what we worry about, because again, we don't like to let people down. But you need to realise that you will end up drained. It'll be you that suffers here, not the other people. It'll be you yourself that ends up with no energy, no motivation, and then you go back to your old default setting. And you clearly weren't happy with that old default setting because that's why you've done something to change. So you clearly knew deep down when you started on your journey, on this mental health journey or this fat loss journey or this whatever it is, you knew this isn't good for me. This isn't my true authentic self. So you knew that you actually didn't like that version of you, and then you've gone back to that old default setting because these people have taken this thing from you, this energy. You've allowed yourself to give your energy to these other people, and you're the one that's then drained, feeling awful, feel crappy, and they feel fine. They're none the wiser. So we're going to cover this a lot in next week's episode. But again, protecting your energy. Understand these other people, again, this is either consciously or unconsciously. So again, I'm not saying people do this deliberately. It's not a deliberate thing where people try and bring you down. But you have to gain the awareness of this. So you've got this person X. Of course, person X. Could be your partner, could be your parents, could be your friends, whatever it is. And their cupboard's pretty bare. Like they've got no energy, they're not feeling great, they've got no motivation, they're kind of pottering along, knowing that they're struggling a little bit, but not really doing much about it. They like to complain. They're almost in that victim mindset we spoke about. You then rock up with your 3 amazing bottles of motivation. You're feeling awesome. You've built this new fridge. Life's awesome. And your friend's there, your partner's there, whatever it is, and their fridge is a bit bare. Their cupboard, they don't have a fridge, they've got a cupboard, and it's bare. And they just turn around to you and say, hey, can I just grab one of your bottles? These lovely bottles of motivation you got. And again, they either do this consciously or unconsciously. Again, remember, they're trying to latch onto you on what you've got. They've seen, oh, wow, this person's got something amazing that I want. Bam, try and latch on. So they either consciously or unconsciously say, oh, can I grab one of these bottles? And then before you know it, because you're a nice person, like, yeah, of course you can. Before you know it, they've taken all of your bottles of motivation, they've destroyed your fridge, and they're now sat there with your bottles of motivation, just sat there in their nice new pristine cupboard that they've built. And you've then got to rebuild again. You then have absolutely nothing. So my question with this is, why are you giving away your bottles when you know that you need them? You know that you need them because you've had to go and create them. This is why you changed your environment. This is why you did work on yourself. This is why you paid for a coach. This is why you're reading books. This is why you're doing all this. It's probably why you're listening to podcasts right now, because you want to better yourself. So then why are you allowing other people to take these things that you're building? Now again, in life, it should be give and take. If your friend is struggling, if your partner's struggling, you should be able to give them all of your bottles of water, knowing full well, do you know what? They're going to help me refill this, so it's not a problem. I can temporarily take the hit and know full well they're going to help me rebuild. That's how it should work. But the problem in life is that is not how most people work. Most relationships we are in, whether we're aware of it or not, you are not getting the same amount of energy given back to you as you're giving in. And that is the problem. You keep pouring out. And if you actually stop and look, you are not getting it reciprocated. That is the problem. This is why you're feeling drained. Because you're now the one's got to restock all these bottles, not them. Now, this is the key thing. And again, you probably won't like this, but you need to hear it. It's your fault. It's your fault, not theirs, because you agreed to let them take it. Let me say that again. It's your fault, not theirs, because you let them take it. If you've not set any sort of boundaries, that is then your fault, not theirs. Because if they don't know that they're doing something wrong, if they don't know they're taking your energy, if you've not said anything, that is then your fault, not theirs, because they don't know. Because it's our responsibility to say no. This is not acceptable. No, thank you. I'll give you one of my bottles, not all 3. But if you don't say anything and you just give it over, that is then on you. Now again, deep rabbit hole here, because again, it's then asking yourself, okay, so why have you done that? Again, potentially childhood trauma, there's all these things, don't want to be alone. I fundamentally get that. But still, it's your responsibility, not theirs. We spoke about this before, radical responsibility. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to help you. You have to take responsibility for the actions that you take in your life. You have to take responsibility. And this is the hard stuff that no one wants to do. If you keep giving all your energy to your friend or your partner, and even this crappy relationship that's not serving you, if you are still staying in that situation, that is your responsibility. Now, again, I'm not saying it's an easy thing. I'm not saying you're deliberately doing it. I'm not saying you want to do it. But you and only you can get yourself out of that situation. And again, it's about asking yourself and reaching out for help. Now, again, example with this, I'm going to ask you a question. So I'm going to give you, the listener, an elephant. What are you going to do with that elephant? Now, there's only 2 rules to this. You can't give it away and you can't sell it. So I want you to think for a second. I'm going to give you an elephant, a fully grown adult elephant. I'm asking you, what are you going to do with it? Now, normally when I do this, what people are going to do is be like, oh, I'd ride it. I've had people say I'd ride it, I stick it in my back garden. There's all these answers that people come up with. The real answer should be, say thank you, but no thank you. Because what on earth are you going to do with an elephant? I'm assuming that you as a listener here, now, I think I've done this before, like Mikey's got a farm, so Mikey could actually take this elephant and Mikey would be absolutely fine. So Mikey's got this farm, he'd be absolutely fine. The problem is, elephants cost £75,000 to keep. So unless you've got a spare £75,000 to keep this elephant and the space like Mikey has, you've got no benefit. It will not serve you having an elephant. No matter how much you want this elephant, like this is when it comes to setting boundaries. If your first thing was, oh yeah, well I could try and do this, that'll then highlight to you, you've got a problem setting boundaries. Because you're accepting something that you've got absolutely no use for, no benefit for you. And again, why? Why would you accept that? But yet we do that in life all the time. People are constantly just, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do that? I'm like, yeah, of course I can. Yeah, of course, yeah. With no boundaries. And then we realise, oh, we actually got 75 grand bill from that. Wow. Well, no one told me that. No. But you had no right to have this elephant. Why would you want an elephant? If you're living in a flat or living in a house with no garden, why would you accept my gift of an elephant? Remember, the 2 rules that I said was, you can't give it away and you can't sell it. But you can say no thank you. Say thanks but no thanks. I don't want to accept this gift. Thank you, though. So when people are saying to you, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? No, I can't. I'm really sorry. Oh, okay, no problem. Oh, and they're like, oh, why can't you do it? Oh, I've actually got this thing going on. Oh, okay, no problem. But you're setting that boundary. Because if it's constantly going to take from you, if you've got to spend time with your kids, you're doing work, all that sort of stuff, and you're constantly giving your energy to other people, is it any wonder why you're not living the life that you want to live? Is it any wonder why you're tired, why you're drained? Because we set absolutely no boundaries. And this is the key thing with this. Again, I want you to hear this message as well. You are not responsible for other people's issues. Let me say that again. You are not responsible for other people's issues. Their lack of X, Y, or Z. You are not responsible for that. You have not created that in them. We spoke about this with some of my guests. Like we create our feelings and emotions. So even if you've done something, it's still that other person. That's their issue to work through, not you. You can't take responsibility for everyone. And this was me to a T back in the day. I used to want to try and help, quote unquote, fix everybody. It showed up in my relationships all the time. I would literally almost go out with girls. I was like, oh, I can help this person. But it's like, it's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to do that. It's not my responsibility to help them. And all it was doing was that I knew that my life was a dumpster fire. And all I was trying to do was just trying to let's just ignore my fires going on in the background and just help everyone else. That's not a good place to be. And again, we can feel guilty. That guilt can be because we feel responsible. We feel like we have to help this person. We feel like we have this responsibility and you don't. But you love them and you want to help them and you want to try and fix this thing or problem. But you can't. They have to want to do it. Remember, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. They have to want to drink. And again, that other saying, you can't wake someone that's pretending to be asleep. People will love to play the victim. People will love to play that sob story because they know that people are going to run to the rescue to help them. Don't be that person that people constantly go to when they're struggling and you're just like, oh yeah, just take everything I've got. And then you're wondering why you're struggling, because this was literally me. I was struggling so much because I was giving all my time, energy and effort to other people that I had no right to be trying to help. And again, all I was doing was just enabling them. I had absolutely zero boundaries, and all people were doing was just destroying my motivation, taking my energy, all these things that I'd spent. But anytime I made myself feel good, it's almost like then it was like a bigger magnet. And when I was getting myself in a good place, more people would be like, oh, I need your help. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. And I had to really lay it down now to be like, no. I need to set my boundaries. And now I will not do a single thing that I don't want to do. I just won't do it. Like, I've got my life so well structured, and again, I understand I'm in a very, very blessed position, so I'm not saying for a single second that everyone can go around doing this, but I've created this. My life now is by design. I've literally, again, if you're watching this on Spotify, I've just come back off holiday again. It's my third holiday of the year. Again, it's by design. I've designed my life this way. I do things very, very intentionally. This is why I've got Mikey smashing the behind-the-scenes stuff of the podcast, because he's awesome at it. Again, so I've got Katie behind the scenes doing all the stuff, again, the admin stuff when it comes to the Promenade project and all that sort of stuff, because I'm not good at it. So all I do now is focus my stuff. I've set my boundaries. This is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. So then it allows me to give my time, energy, and effort into doing things like this, the presentations, the workshops, all the organizations I go into, the radio, this podcast. This is what I'm good at. I've set my boundary. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I know what makes my energy go up. I know what makes it go down. And I give so much energy to people. This podcast is a free thing. This podcast costs me money. The radio is a free thing. My Instagram, my social media, all the stuff is free. And again, the way that I'm able to give all this energy is because I now am able to refill my cup, which enables me to give out more energy. That's how this game works. When you set your boundaries, you fill up your energy. You now don't have 4 bottles of water, you've got 10, 15, which then means you can give out 5 or 6 and it doesn't affect you. Because you're doing things you want to do, you set that boundary. You're living on your terms. This is your life. And again, I understand this is very idealistic. I get that. I understand that not everyone can do this. But you can start off by doing small little things, small little boundaries where people are literally taking the piss out of you. They are literally mugging you off and they're taking the piss out of you. You can start small by just setting the boundaries there, because then that's an extra bottle of water that you've got back. So now instead of having 3, you've now got 4. And then you set another little boundary. Now you've got 5. Now you've got 6. 6 is better than 3. Awesome. Which then means you can then focus your attention and give your energy and motivation, time, whatever it is, to people that actually need and deserve it. So then how do you actually set these boundaries? The first thing you've got to do is actually ask yourself, what is your actual preference? In this situation that you're in, what is your preference? What is your desires? And how do you actually feel about things? Because if you don't decide, other people will decide for you, which is fundamentally what's been happening throughout your life. You've not set boundaries and you've not asked yourself, what do I want out of this situation? You've not asked, what do I want? So other people have told you, well, this is what you're going to get. Because if you don't ask for something, other people are going to give it to you. When we spoke about that free will episode, we spoke about life. And in life basically said that life is just like a river. It's going in one direction. You go into the sea, that's it. You go into the sea, that's where it ends. You can't go upstream, but all you can do is just guide your boat. And if you don't guide your boat, other people will guide it for you. It starts with setting boundaries and asking yourself, what do you actually want? Know what you want first and put your needs first. Because if you're doing this properly, you've got your needs and what you want, and especially if you're in a relationship, you're going to have your needs, your wants, your desires, your preferences. Awesome. Your partner will then have the same, and then you can come to a compromise. That is how relationships work. That is how friendships work. It's not about you saying, well, this is what I want, and this is what I'm willing to accept, and nothing else is acceptable. It's not about that. But fundamentally, you need to know where you stand and what you want, so then you can negotiate something that works for both parties. This is how life works. The second part of this is, the first one is like, what do you want? The second thing is you actually got to be able to communicate it. Communicate and express your boundaries so that people know where you stand and what your boundaries are. Because if you don't tell people, how will they know? How will they know? And it's a key thing again. If you're a woman listening to this, I know a lot of the demographic of my listeners are women. If you're a woman listening to this and you're with a male partner, understand you really, really have to dumb this down. Because us as males, trust me, we don't get it. You think we get it, but we really don't. And then you get frustrated with us because we do the thing you told us not to do. It's because we didn't understand in the first place. So you really have to explain it. Meet that person where they are. Literally meet that person where they are. Don't communicate on your level of awareness and like what you go to their level. What will they understand? Actually explain it and communicate it to them. You're not being patronizing, but literally explain it to them so they understand it. Because there's no point in you communicating and it not going in. Because then your partner's going to keep making that same mistake over and over and over again. You have to meet them where they are and communicate to them on their level so they actually understand it. That's how it works. And again, also understand here, don't be afraid of uncomfortable situations because it can be very uncomfortable when you first do this. If you've never set a boundary in your life, if you've never actually had a conversation with someone where you're just like, listen, this is what's acceptable, this is what is acceptable, this is what's not acceptable, that is then a big thing. And then communicate directly. Communicate honestly and communicate kindly. Directly, honestly, kindly, and fundamentally, don't be a dick. Important to remember here, when you're communicating with someone, don't be a dick. Don't belittle them, don't degrade them, don't humiliate them. You're having an open, honest conversation where you're trying to get the best outcome for both parties. That is the goal. And again, especially if they've been mugging you off, actually, the outcome is going to be a lot more in your favour. So understand it may be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be had, because if you actually care about this person, this situation, and you want to salvage something, and if they actually care about you as a person, once you communicate and articulate your boundaries, why you want to set them, how it's made you feel, etc., etc., if they actually care for you as a person, they will accept what you're saying and they will do something about it. Actions speak louder than words. Now, the final part of this is actually defending your boundaries. Now, this is the hardest part. This is actually part that a good friend of mine, Paul Cope, actually introduced me to, because I didn't realise this is the key part of actually boundary setting, is actually defending your boundaries. Because once you then set these boundaries, now again, I'm not saying the person you're with is narcissistic, I'm not saying your friend's narcissistic, I'm not saying anything like that, but if you so happen to be in that situation where the person you're trying to communicate boundaries to is of that persuasion and is not necessarily a nice person at heart, understand they will consciously try and push your boundaries. They'll try and push back, they'll try and test you. And also understand people will do this unconsciously. Again, they're not a bad person, but if they've had something so good for so long, and then you've suddenly tried to put a fence up, they might be like, I don't really like this fence. I'm trying to, can I kind of move this boundary a little bit? Just going to move it a little bit. So again, imagine you've got a next door neighbour and there's been no boundary when it comes to a hedge, and they're mowing the lawn. So again, they're mowing the lawn. You're trying to grow this like night. Imagine you're trying to this analogy. I'm completely winging this analogy, so let's just hope it works. So next door neighbour, gardens. You've got gardens, no fence, and you're trying to create a beautiful butterfly sanctuary. So you're trying to grow your grass, and it's all beautiful and amazing. And they like their grass completely cut like a bowling green, and they keep cutting part of your grass, so it's encroaching onto your grass. That's here them taking your energy. So what you've done, if you communicate to them. Again, communicate effectively directly. Listen, I'm trying to grow this butterfly sanctuary here, and I actually think that what you're doing is encroaching on my area. I'd love it if we could come to sort of arrangement where we could sort of get this boundary set up, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, that's amazing. But then in their head, they're like, well, actually, I really don't like where this is now. So then again, they'll try and push it again. They'll try and push it, and they'll try and push it, and they'll try and push it, slowly and slowly, inch by inch, until they're back to where they were again. Again, it's either consciously or unconsciously. So literally what you have to do is set up a barrier. Put that boundary up and actually then defend it. Put a fence up. This is my boundary. This is what I'm willing to accept. This is what I'm not willing to accept. You do not cut past this fence. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and they've tried to move that fence post, whoa. That fence post was right here. Move it back again. You have to defend your boundaries. This is why you have to stay strong and reinforce those boundaries and stick to your guns. And this is by far the hardest step. Defending your boundaries is the hardest step. You think the communication is, but it's actually the defending. That is the hardest step. And it can be very, very uncomfortable and very, very awkward when you first start setting boundaries. But I promise you, once you actually start to set these boundaries and actually articulate what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept, and especially if you're in a relationship and you actually learn the art of effective communication, it is absolutely game-changing for you, because you both get what you want out of the situation, which is fundamentally what a relationship should be. It should be give and take. And again, remember, there's times and places where you will have to give more than you receive. That's an absolute given. But if this is every day of your life and you're wondering why you're tired, you're drained, you're feeling low, no motivation, blah, 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 just have a look. Are people literally mugging you off and taking the piss because you're a nice person? If you took any value from today's episode, don't forget to like and share with a friend. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love you guys. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well, where I post daily content, Daniel_James_fitness. See you guys next week.